Another function of the ICU display screen is to provide information about active faults in a vehicle while the parking brake is set. Fault codes are messages that are generated by an ECU to indicate that it has detected a problem needing repair. Fault codes are comprised of a message identifier, or MID, that identifies the affected system. There is also either a parameter identifier, or PID, which is displayed if the problem affects a specific piece of data, or a subsystem identifier, or SID, if the problem affects a subsystem. Both are used to identify the source of a problem. Finally, there is a failure mode identifier, or FMI, which identifies what's gone wrong. Depending on which ICU is installed, fault codes will appear differently. On the ICU-3 without the trip reset button and the ICU-2L, a shorthand fault code will display. The code consists of an abbreviation for the name of the ECU with the fault in the MID of that ECU. You must use ServiceLink to display the complete code. On the ICU-3 with the trip reset button, there are complete fault codes. Use the trip reset button to cycle through the display screens. The ICU-1 and ICU-2M will display the complete fault code with text. Use the keypad arrows to scroll to the next fault code. If a fault code displays on the ICU screen, it indicates a problem with the ICU or another system on the vehicle. A fault code with a MID of 140, 142, or 234 indicates a problem with the ICU. In some cases, the ICU must be replaced if a failed component is not identified. All other MIDs require you to refer to either the workshop manual or to the OEM's diagnostic and repair literature to diagnose the problem. For engine or ABS ECU fault codes, you may also see a warning lamp on the dash. Roll call faults are exceptions to the rule that a fault message is broadcast by an ECU. A roll call fault is the ICU's way of telling you that it did not find a particular ECU. They are not true faults because the ICU generates these codes and they are not broadcast on the data link. The roll call is performed as follows. The ICU sends two messages to each MID in the list of devices that it's supposed to look for, and checks for valid responses from each ECU. If the ICU does not receive valid responses from a particular ECU, the ICU will display a roll call fault for that ECU. The ECUs that may be reported in a roll call fault depend on which ICU model is installed. ICU-3s and newer versions of the ICU-2L will look only for engine and ABS ECUs. The ICU-1 and ICU-2M roll call function is controlled by parameters which can be changed with ServiceLink. A non-zero value in a roll call parameter sets the MID of the ECU that the ICU will attempt to locate. On the ICU-3 and the ICU-2L, the text description will be displayed as no engine and no ABS, indicating that these systems did not respond to a roll call request. The ICU-1 and ICU-2M roll call faults will always identify the non-responsive ECU by its MID, followed by a SID of 254 and an FMI of 07. The text description on the display screen will read no respond or no response. While roll call faults can be confusing to diagnose, there are only three situations in which they occur. The ECU for which the roll call fault is being reported does not properly support the roll call function. When there is a legitimate problem with the vehicle's data link, such as crossed wires or no power to an ECU, or when the ICU-1 or ICU-2M roll call parameter was enabled in error. When diagnosing roll call faults, use ServiceLink to verify the ECUs that are installed on the vehicle. If ServiceLink does not find the ICU or its data link wiring may be faulty. If ServiceLink does not find the ECU for which the roll call fault is reported, the ECU may be faulty, or for the ICU-1 or ICU-2M, the ECU roll call parameter on the ICU may be enabled in error. If a parameter is enabled in error, disable it. There are some ECUs that do not respond properly to the roll call, including most electronic transmissions and Bendix ABS systems, and all communication systems. Their parameters should usually be set to 0, unless the vehicle has an ICU-1, a Qualcomm system, and the owner wants incoming messages displayed on the ICU. Refer to either Diagnostic Routines or Service Lit for further information.